All right, team, let's change gears, literally speaking, because if it feels like F1 is suddenly everywhere, and you know that I like it, you're not imagining it, this year the sport pulled in an estimated 827 million fans worldwide. Crowds at the track hit record highs. TV audiences here in Australia jumped by more than 50%, and they were helped along, one might think, by Oscar's title fight, and we won't talk about the ending there, but he lives to fight again next year. Now, the demographic is interesting. It's younger, it's more female, and yes, as I was talking with the boys this morning on the Brekkie Show, a lot of it started with that Netflix series Drive to Survive, which dragged a whole new generation into the paddock. My guest this morning to discuss F1 and the fascination with F1 is WA's own Diane Bortoletto, host of And Away We Go, which is an F1 podcast. She calls it the best sport in the world, and she is on a mission to convert the rest of us. Di, welcome. How are you going?
Hi, Chrissy. Thanks for having me.
Sorry for munting your last name. Would you like to say it beautifully for me?
No, you got it perfectly right. Bortoletto.
Second guess myself for a dash. All right, let's talk about you. Why did you, Di, start an F1 podcast, and what is it about the sport that completely hooked you?
Well, look, my love for Formula One began in the 90s. Yes, showing my age now. In my first PR job in London, where I worked on a Formula One account for a big PR agency. And before then, I didn't really know anything about the sport besides that there was a driver called Michael Schumacher who seemed to be winning a lot. And part of my job there was to monitor the media. And back in those days, it was done the analogue way, literally flicking through the newspaper and magazines and reading articles looking for mentions of the Orange Arrows Formula One team, which the drivers at the time were Jos Verstappen, so that's Max Verstappen's dad, and Pedro de la Rosa, who's a commentator these days. So that's when, and within 2 weeks of starting that job, I was just fully invested and addicted, hook, line and sinker. I just fell in love with the sport. It's just so, the strategy behind it, it's complex, it's dangerous, it's glamorous, it's fast, it's held in fantastic locations. Yeah, what's not to love?
Yeah. So I rattled off those numbers at the start. So we've got hundreds of millions of fans. We've got record crowds, huge TV growth here in Australia. From where you sit, what's really behind this F1 boom? Is it Netflix, the personalities, the on-track racing?
Yeah, Netflix is a really big part of it. So I guess go back a step, it was the sale of Formula One. So during the Bernie Ecclestone era, when he owned the sport, he kept it very exclusive. He had really tight reins on access to teams, drivers and the sport. Then the digital revolution came, I suppose, the explosion of social media, the sale of Formula One to Liberty Media, who opened up the sport. They did the deal with Netflix to start Drive to Survive, and it was just a combination of a perfect storm, really. Like, the world was in lockdowns. There was hardly any global sport being played, but Formula One continued on with no crowds at the tracks, but they kept racing. So you had some sport on where everyone was starved of sport, and Netflix with their brilliant, docuseries, Drive to Survive, which, I just thought was absolutely fantastic. Never before had we seen.
Can you explain that
team
to the uninitiated, Di? How does it operate? So those who haven't seen it, how would you describe it?
Drive to Survive?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a behind-the-scenes, fly-on-the-wall kind of documentary where, the Netflix crews are just lurking in the background, getting snippets of different conversations, and then they sit down and interview, team drivers and
they go to their houses and everything, don't they? Interview their kids. It's quite encompassing.
Yeah, like the first few series are absolutely brilliant. As we're up to, they've just aired Series 7 at the start of this year. And it's a bit more curated now, and it's been criticised a little bit for hamming up the drama, but, it's really attracted a massive audience to the sport, a younger audience and a female audience, and cracked the US market. So that is one big part of how the sport has just boomed, as well as they changed the Formula One regulations to make the racing closer. Like they put in a cost cap. So it wasn't just about budget. So it wasn't just about the teams with the biggest budget had the best cars, best drivers, they would always win. So it became a lot more competitive, the racing itself. And, we've seen that this year where we've had, multiple race winners. It's not just been, McLaren has dominated, but both of their drivers, including our own Oscar Piastri, they've both won 7 races apiece. So, the racing has been a lot closer, which in turn just makes it a better spectacle.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. From a Perth lounge room point of view, you talked about Oscar Piastri, that factor there. Have you noticed that more Aussies, especially here in WA, suddenly talking F1 again the way they did back in the Mark Webber, Daniel Ricciardo years?
Oh, absolutely. I just love it because people are coming up to me talking about Formula One, whereas, 10 years ago, no one spoke to me about Formula One and I felt like I was a little lonely fan. But, no, it's brilliant. And Oscar has certainly driven huge excitement in Australia in Formula One.
Yeah, I remember watching that part of the series, where they're talking with Daniel Ricciardo and when he was, unceremoniously shuffled away and then brought back in and they interviewed his parents. I think they went to a barbecue at his parents' place and they were talking about him there. It was, I really felt for him. And it gives you a whole new perspective, a whole new way of investing in the individual drivers, doesn't it? Choosing a favourite.
Absolutely. And, getting access to the drivers like never before, also direct to them through social media, not just through Netflix, has just opened up, the fandom for Formula One. And interestingly, a lot of the younger fans don't actually watch the races. They consume all the short form content on YouTube, on social media. They follow the drivers, they listen to all the gossip and follow all the happenings on and off the track, but they don't sit down and watch the hour and a half, 2 hour race, which I find really, really quite strange because to me that's, it's not always exciting racing, just like football games aren't always exciting, but it's... it's like Big Bash compared to the Test cricket though, isn't it? Or the highlights reel at the end of the day. I quite like the highlights reel at the end of the day, to be honest. I have to be a bit honest there. Do you think, with that thought in mind, do you think old school fans who perhaps turn their nose up at these new fans, especially the younger ones and the girls, they think to get over it, welcome them in and think, oh, this is great for our sport? 100%. 100%. It is so good for the sport. And I just think those crusty old fans, and I'm an older fan myself, but, those that don't welcome the new fans, I think it's just a really old school, horrible way of thinking. The downside to the explosion of Formula Ones is that it's impossible to get tickets. It's so hard to get tickets. 10 years ago, or 11 years ago actually, we went to the Monaco Grand Prix and I booked tickets 2 weeks in advance because other plans had fallen through in Europe and it was Monaco Grand Prix on, let's go to that. And, nowadays you would never be able to do that.
It's ridiculous. The record crowds, I've read the stats, says 6.7 million people went to F1 races in 2025 and all events sold out. That is absolutely astronomical. Imagine the revenue from that. All right, so for anyone who's listening to us, who's only ever half watched a race or seen clips on socials that you're talking about, what's your beginner's guide? How do you suggest a new fan gets into F1 in 2026?
Well, definitely watch Drive to Survive. So go back and watch the latest series. The new season will be out probably in February. I haven't got a launch date, haven't seen a launch date yet. Watch Drive to Survive and then, watch the races. Watch the races, the lead up to the races, all the commentary, all the interviews with the drivers. Mark Brundle, one of the Sky commentators, does a grid walk where he's interviewing celebrities on the grid. Perhaps follow some of the teams and drivers on social media as well and just learn, try and learn some of the basic rules. Essentially, the car that crosses the line first wins. But, the other rules is that, they have to use 2 different compound of tyres during the race, so there needs to be a pit stop.
Di, you know what we need to do? You know what we need to do because we've got a minute and 30 seconds? We need to listen to your F1 podcast and away we go. We get everything there. We get travel, food, lifestyle, everything around the race weekends. So if a Perth listener wanted to do one F1 race as a bucket list trip, which one would you send them to and why? 30 seconds,
if
go.
money was no object, Monaco.
Monaco.
The Australian Grand Prix is a really good experience in Melbourne as well. That's fabulous. Lots of off-track action. Yeah.
Di Bortoletto, thank you for your time today. And we're off and racing.
Thanks for having me on, Chrissy.
Thanks, Di Bortoletto, host of an Away We Go, an F1 podcast here in Australia. Are they astronomical numbers? 6.7 million people went and actually saw a race this year. I just think that's huge. 827 million fans, and roughly 43% of those fans are under 35 and 40 to 42% are women.